And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me, as always, is my beautiful co-host Laraib. As we hop into our Week 2 NFL predictions, we're doing something a little different this week, Laraib. So instead of going through all the games like normal, we just figured that takes too long, and we like more concise, accurate content. So we each chose 5 games this week that we wanted to highlight for a total of 10 games, and we left out 5 games. We'll still go over them at the end with you, just giving our brief analysis and picks. But we've chosen our 10 games, and we'll roll through those first 10. And then at the end, we'll, as always, give you our locks, upsets, and best bets for the week, Laraib. But yeah, first off, you need a little bounce back week here, Laraib, in your picks. Are you feeling more confident about this slate of games?
Yeah, Lewis, after week 1, you get a little bit more sense of what teams are going to do and what they're not going to do. And, compared to last year's week 1, I only lost by 1 point this time. So, I'm improving from last season, which is a good thing, Lewis. And of course, about, our slate of games that we're going to go through. Of course, we love watching football, but sometimes there's just a couple of games that, maybe I just don't want to hear about this. I don't want to watch this game. Like this week, we have the Colts at the Texans, 2 rookie quarterbacks going at it. It could be interesting, but
could be fun.
Maybe not as fun as Seahawks Lions, which is my game of the week. Or, you talk about the Giants team who's facing the Cardinals this week, just probably not going to be that interesting. So we want to change it up for you guys, maybe not have hour-long episodes on our predictions and, make it a little bit more clear for you guys, Lewis. So without further ado, let's get into week 2 of NFL season, Lewis. We have the Green Bay Packers traveling to Atlanta. And now the line for this game, Lewis, has been fluctuating up and down, sometimes leaning Packers, sometimes leaning Falcons. But here on Thursday evening, Lewis, we have the Falcons as 1.5-point favorites at home, Lewis. What are you thinking for this game?
Yeah, and I want to quickly mention, Laraib, I didn't want to cut you off, but if you were looking for our Thursday night football predictions, those were in our week 1 analysis video. So go check that out to see what we thought about that game. We're probably going to be dropping this on Thursday, so you'll be able to see that prior to that. But to talk about this matchup, Laraib, 2 of the, biggest question marks in the NFL at quarterback that I think people are excited about based off week 1, more so Jordan Love. And I think Jordan Love on the road, big test here. He didn't really face a lot of pressure against the Bears defense last week. So the big thing for me is how can Atlanta hurry Jordan Love up with the defense over there with Ryan Nielsen, the former Saint. They don't like to blitz a lot. They like to try to get you with their front 4. But I don't know how successful you're going to be. They had a pretty decent job of, startling Bryce Young, but they really didn't sack him that much, or not nearly as much as you would expect against that kind of shaky Carolina offensive line and the rookie quarterback. So against this experienced Packers offensive line, how much are they going to be able to throttle, a Jordan Love who we have question marks? Is Christian Watson going to play? Aaron Jones, both questionable for this Sunday's game with hamstring injuries. But I'll tell you, Laraib, I think I like the matchup here, even without those guys for the Packers on the road. I really like this Green Bay offensive line. I think they protect very, very well. So I think they'll be able to run the ball even without Aaron Jones. I think A.J. Dillon will have a big game against this Falcons defense. And I still do not trust this Falcons secondary. I love the addition of Jesse Bates, and he had a huge impact last Sunday. But I just really need them to be tested. I don't know if Jordan Love can do that, but they'll definitely put up a bigger fight than the Panthers last week. So I like that side of the ball matchup for the Green Bay Packers, Laraib.
Yeah, for sure. And I like their defense in this one as well. Now, last week for this Falcons team, they got to attack a Panthers defense who's kind of young, Lewis. They have some nice guys like our boy Jeremy Chin and Brian Burns. But you look at the Packers defense, which absolutely, just stifled that Bears defense. Now, Bears put up 20 points in garbage time, but still, this Packers unit looked amazing, outstanding. Now, last week, Desmond Ridder against the Panthers only had to throw for 18 times and only had 15 completions. But on this one, I think he's going to have to throw the ball a lot more, Lewis, especially if the Packers can stack that box with 7 deep, with 7 guys and force them to pass the ball. I think this is a great opportunity for this Packers defense to capitalize. Now, of course, on the outside, you have Jair Alexander, who's going to be one-on-one with Drake London, who didn't have a single reception this past Sunday, Lewis. I think that could be the case again for this one. Desmond Ridder, he didn't have to, he only had to manage the game for them last week. But I think in this one, Jordan Love can get it done. Like you said, even if Aaron Jones and Christian Watson don't play, Romeo Doubs had a touchdown last week. AJ Dillon, of course, is one of the best, one of the better, backup running backs in the league. And of course, like you mentioned, with that great offensive line over there in Green Bay, I think Jordan Love is going to have ample time in the pocket. And once again, the Packers team going on a road in a dome, I think they get it done. Jordan Love wins this game in his second, in the second game this year. I like the Packers 27-24.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a close game. I'm going to go a little lower scoring than you, though. I like the Packers here 23-20. This is a team that we're both pretty high on. And I am also pretty high on Atlanta. I need to see more from Desmond Ridder in the passing game. And against this Packers secondary, that gives me a lot of anxiety if I'm a Falcons fan, which thank goodness I am not. But Laraib, let's go ahead and move on to our next game of the noon slate. We have the Baltimore Ravens going to Cincinnati. Both teams, Ravens won, but they didn't look impressive. And obviously the Bengals looked awful. So Laraib, with Cincinnati at home, 3-point favorite, what can the Ravens do to keep to correct their offense? Because their offense looked pretty shaky against the Texans at home. What can they do against this Bengals team to just, get them back on track?
Well, Lewis, they can look at what the Browns did last week, and that was really control the game on the ground. Now, of course, unfortunately for the Ravens, their starting running back, J.K. Dobbins, goes down, and they have to, lean on Justice Hill and Gus Edwards once again this season. And of course, Lamar, it's going to be on him to, tidy up some of those bad plays he had last week. He had a fumble on the ground, he had just a bad interception. And the one bright spot for their offense, Lewis, was a rookie wide receiver, Zay Flowers. He had an outstanding job against an albeit a bad secondary in the Texans. But in this one, I think if he can get incorporated into the offense a lot more, of course, Odell Beckham Jr. is a big name they brought in over the offseason, but he had minimal impact except for, a couple pass interference calls that he got. But I think if they can play through Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson can get back to some of that, classic Lamar, he's going to have the play action. Hopefully Mark Andrews is going to be in for this, in for this game. And so that really opens up the game for them a lot more in the play action game, Lewis. And against this Bengals team, which looked awful last week against the Browns, that was a game, Lewis, where it was raining, pouring down really hard, and it was really on the ground game. But I think for this Ravens team, if they can keep on exploiting that run defense for the Bengals, they potentially could get it done in this one.
Yeah, I mean, if the story is Joe Burrow against the Browns, that's just his kryptonite. But the opposite is true with the Ravens. Joe Burrow in this passing attack has found the most success against this Ravens secondary, which is pretty depleted right now. And just not a lot of guys that you really trust, a lot of youth on that end. Plus the injury to Marcus Williams, one of my favorite players from his Saints days. And then a standout for the Ravens also got injured with a pec injury. So I think if you're a Jamar Chase fantasy owner or a T. Higgins fantasy owner who was bummed out by last week, I think this is the week where you get your hopes up again because this passing attack will be back, Laraib. That offensive line for the Bengals, it was kind of a fluky game. I think that Browns pass rush is really good. And I know the Ravens have a good front seven that I trust a lot. But, with that awful weather on the road, I think they'll get a lot more comfortable at home in their own building. And, Joe Burrow, he's going to bounce back. He's not going to have that bad of a game, especially against this inexperienced defense. And then on the flip side of the ball, I don't see how the Ravens are going to have success against this Bengals defense. There's just so much talent. And if they can't run the ball and establish a balanced passing game, you're going to really put Lamar into some tough spots against the Bengals where, if he's prime Lamar, I don't have any questions about it. But the way he looked last week had me, a little bit of doubts in my mind of how successful he can be in this spot. So I like the Bengals in this spot to cover at the 3 number. I think they bounce back and get the ball rolling in that division. So I do like the Bengals in this one, Laraib. Give me the Bengals 35-26.
Well, Lewis, I'm going to lean the other way. I like the Ravens in this one. The Bengals historically with Joe Burrow off to slow starts. We saw this last year, 0-2, and I think they start off 0-2 again this year. Lamar Jackson with his main guy, Mark Andrews, back in this one. Of course, they have the offensive line is a little bit banged up with Linderbaum and Ronnie Stanley, getting a little dinged up in their last game against the Texans. But I think in this one, the Bengals continue to start off slow. Joe Burrow still trying to be cautious with that calf injury. I think they struggle once again on offense, Lewis. Well, actually, maybe they don't struggle, but they don't keep up with Lamar Jackson and his reinvigorated ground game in this one. I like the Ravens 31-28. This is going to be a fun game to watch, Lewis.
Yeah, it would be very upsetting for a Jamar Chase stinker another week in a row, especially for some fantasy owners out there. But Laraib, let's move on to our next game on this noon slate. We have your Seattle Seahawks going to Detroit to face the Lions. Detroit's favored by 4.5 points, Laraib. I'll let you take the floor with this. How can Seattle right the ship?
Well, Lewis, it's going to start with our offensive line. Last week, Aaron Donald came blasting through, but this week, I think if they can get a hold on Aiden Hutchinson, especially when he likes to play on the outside of that line, get some chip blocks on him with our tight ends, I think we have the potential to win this game, Lewis. Now, last week, we got just pieced up by Matt Stafford in the secondary, but bright spot was Reek Woolen, only gave up one completion in that game. And of course, our standout rookie cornerback will be playing in this one. Devon Witherspoon will be good to go for this one. And hopefully Jamal Adams as well. And last year, if you recall, Lewis, this game was a 48-45 game. Not much defense in this one. And I think it's going to be on both these offenses to, go out and show out in this one. And I think I can trust Geno Smith, with our three good wide receivers and hopefully a bounce back, another solid performance from Ken Walker. I think they can get it done on this one. I mentioned this a couple of times already last week. Opening night, the Lions, only scored 14 points on offense, Lewis, and was supposed to be, one of the higher scoring offenses in the league. Even with Amon-Ra St. Brown, the second wide receiver, they have, good recognizable names like Marvin Jones and Josh Reynolds, but can they keep up with the Seahawks offense, Lewis? I don't think so. I like the Seahawks on the road to beat them again this year.
See, Rob, I agree with you in the result, but not the process. I think the way to get this Detroit team is on the ground. And I was actually pretty impressed with how Seattle ran the ball against the Rams and kind of a short sample because all of a sudden that game got out of hand and they couldn't run the ball anymore if they wanted to stay in it. And they just could not find the success passing the ball. I would like to throw that game out, call it a fluke, because I think, it was. I'm still not impressed with the Rams, and we'll get to them later. But I think Seattle can have success in this game. Kenneth Walker needs to be heavily featured. I think running the ball is your best bet against this Detroit team. Get that offense off the field, keep your defense rested, and the Seahawks, to your point, have a decent offensive line. And I don't trust this Lions rush defense. The guys in the middle, Jack Campbell's a young linebacker. Alex Anzalone doesn't really scare me that much. And I think they'll be able to really just go up this front of this Lions defense with not a lot of big bodies in the middle and really do a lot of damage. And then play action pass, get Tyler Lockett out there, make him more of a component of this offense. And that will unlock the passing game for Geno Smith and the Seahawks. So that is a huge key in this game. And Pete Carroll wants to emphasize the run. And my biggest concern, if I am a Seahawks fan, Laraib, is the flip side of the ball. Y'all did not get a lot of pressure whatsoever last week, and that was my biggest concern. Now against this Lions offensive line, which is one of the best in the entire NFL, you're going to have to manufacture pressure somehow. And I really do not know how you're going to do it. If you blitz, Jared Goff is just going to play action, pass you to death. So I think you need to stay consistent, keep that offense off the field, run the ball. But I do like Seattle in this spot, Laraib. I'm not going to go super high scoring, but I'm going to go Seattle winning this one 27-26 off a walk-off by Jason Myers, Laraib.
Yeah, Lewis, and I am going to go high scoring in this one. These are one of the two premier passing attacks in the NFL, and I think the Seahawks can come out on top in this one. I like the Seahawks 31-28, Lewis, on the road, and another victory over the Lions in another year, Lewis. But let's move on to another game. We have the Los Angeles Chargers going to Tennessee to play the Titans. Chargers -3 in this one, Lewis, and both of these teams coming off really, really small, losses last week. Both these teams combining for less than 3 points, or at 3 points in their losses combined. And in this one, I think the Chargers, this is another rematch from last year, Lewis, where the Chargers won 17-14. And I think it might be that same, type of game again this year. You look at these two rosters that mostly stayed the same from last year. But the one big thing, Lewis, is going to be Austin Eckler is banged up. He did not have practice for the second day in a row. And so it's going to be on Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller to pick up some of the slack in this one. But for the Titans team, their defense was bend, don't break last week with only giving up 16 points, but it was Ryan Tannehill with 3 picks in that game that really kind of cost him in that one. And now you're facing a Chargers defense, which is not that amazing, Lewis. And so if Ryan Tannehill can keep a clean game, I think they could win this game, but not unless my boy Jay Herbo has something to say about that in this one. We saw that game together, Lewis. He looked pissed after that final possession against the Dolphins, and I think he's going to come out with some fire in his gut for this one, and he's going to light up this Titans team.
Yeah, fire in your gut. Yeah, this is going to tell us a lot about these two teams, because these two teams had kind of polar opposite losses the past 2 weeks. Chargers lost in a high-scoring just collapse at the end, and the Titans lost in a super, rock fight, low-scoring game where the defense played well, but their offense couldn't get out of their own way, and vice versa, So it's going to be interesting to see, what is the very movable object and what is the very, stopping force here for these two teams? Is it the Chargers defense is just not as good as we expected? Or is this Titans offense really, really bad? Which I hope it's that, which I hope it's the Chargers defense, because maybe it's the Saints defense that was just really good. But I don't know. It's hard to make, because I think the Chargers defense, for the most part, played really well. It's just the other team had Tyreek Hill, and the secondary especially really got hurt in that instance, because they could just not keep up with that speed. Well, you go from the fastest team in the NFL and the Chargers to probably the slowest receiver room in the entire NFL in the Tennessee Titans, and a quarterback who, if he threatens you deep, you better be ready to catch it, because you will get balls thrown to you that you could pick off. So it'll be a very stark contrast, and I'm excited to see how, because their run defense looked better. They held the Dolphins to under 50 yards rushing. Now, I mean, it's not you. Why would you run when you can just do whatever you want in the passing game? That's a fair argument. But I do like the Chargers matchup in this game against the Tennessee receivers. I think they can play more bump and run, really get in, play aggressive man like Brandon Staley likes to play, and they'll be a lot more successful in that matchup. So I agree with you. I like the Chargers in this game. The big thing I want to see from Justin Herbert and the new offensive coordinator is they were very committed to the run. Over 200 yards rushing. Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly got a lot of burn. So we'll see if they can stay consistent. I was very impressed with the Titans front seven in that ball game. So I want to see Justin Herbert and these receivers really make their impact in this game. But I agree with you. I like the Chargers in this game. I think it's going to be higher scoring than last year, but I think the Chargers pull ahead with a late touchdown to make the game look a lot more lopsided than it actually was. So I'm going to go Chargers 31 to Titans 17.
Holy smokes. That's a lot of points from the Chargers. I agree with you that the Chargers are going to win, Lewis, like you agreed with me from beforehand. But I think that the defense for the Titans steps up a little bit and keeps it a pretty close game until the end. I like my Chargers with Jay Herbo 21 to 17 on the road as they pick up their first win of the 2023 NFL season, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to another big one here. We have the Kansas City Chiefs at 0-1 going to Jacksonville to play the 1-0 Chargers, Lewis. Now the Chiefs minus 3.5 in this one, and Travis Kelce, Lewis, still questionable for this game. Now, what do you think this Chiefs team is going to look like coming off a bad loss on Thursday night?
I mean, it's the Chiefs off a loss. With extra time to prepare, I think this is a great spot for Kansas City. Now, at the number 3.5, I'm not a huge fan of that. Earlier in the week, it was at like -2, I think, and that would have been great value for you if you were betting the Chiefs. But at 3.5, I still like the Chiefs to win this game outright. I just think and it's kind of less of a football standpoint. I think they'll be better, the receivers. They heard all the noise. They'll be locked in on the road, kind of in a they're not in the solo spotlight like they were with the pressure and expectation of being the Super Bowl champs, raising the banner, all that. They'll be locked in. They'll be focused. Mahomes will be locked in. There's no question about that. And then I think, I think this is a game where Andy Reid, he hears all the criticism and he's going to try to get these receivers involved, get them easy stuff, get them screens, get them just kind of see the ball rolling, get them easy stuff. And then when you need to trust them down the line, you'll be able to. And I'm really under the impression, Laraib, that Travis Kelce is going to play in this game. I listened to him on the New Heights podcast. Shout out to them. But it sounded like, he was pissed that he was going to be out there. And he didn't say for sure whether or not he was going to play in week 2, but he sounded pretty optimistic. So I'm going to go ahead and pencil him in to play in this spot. But I like the matchup. I think this offensive line played pretty well. Jawan Taylor going up against his former team. He knows those edge rushers over there. They also know him. So that Jaguars coaching staff will be in the ref's ear saying, watch that boy jump early and watch him see his depth off the ball, because the refs are going to be watching for that this game. So that'll be a point to look at, but I think he'll be fine. And I'm excited to see how they run the ball. But, it's Mahomes, it's Reid. I think they get it done in this spot on the road, Laraib.
Yeah, Lewis, Patrick Mahomes is 13-3 in games coming off a loss, and he's playing on his birthday, Lewis. And so, that's really all I had to say for this one to let you know my pick. But I will say, this Jaguars defense gave up 223 passing yards to Anthony Richardson, the rookie quarterback. And now just imagine what they're going to give up to Travis Kelce in this one, Lewis. The Jaguars gave up the 4th most receiving yards to tight ends last year. And I think Travis Kelce, he was a game time decision for the opener. And so I think for this one, they may be just trying to hide it. Like, is he going to play? Is he not going to play? But I think we can say he's probably going to play in this one. And I just like the Chiefs, Lewis, on the road 27-21.
Chiefs also getting a break here with the weather. It's only supposed to be about 80 degrees, pretty cloudy that day, not expected rain. So you're not going to be dealing with that South Florida heat like we thought could potentially be a problem for the Chiefs going into here. So I like the spot. I did like to see what I saw from the Jaguars offense last week. A lot of different things. Calvin Ridley looked very impressive, but I was also very impressed with this Chiefs defense. But all the reasons you mentioned, the Chiefs, you have to take the Chiefs in this spot. I don't see them going down 0-2. So I will take the Chiefs 21-13 to cover on the road, Laraib. But let's move on to our next game. We have the San Francisco 49ers traveling to the Rams. Rams are a 7.5-point underdog at home against a division opponent. Usually for bettors, that's what you call free money. But that may not necessarily be the case here, Laraib, because San Francisco looks like a juggernaut early on after demolishing the Steelers on the road. They look primed to just continue. There's no reason to expect why they wouldn't. The big thing for me in this game is how legit is this Rams offensive line? Because this looked like last year one of the weakest units in the entire NFL. And then to allow 0 sacks against the Seahawks on the road. As a Seahawks fan, you hope it's just they're amazing, right? But I don't think that's the case. I think the San Francisco defense will be able to get a lot of pressure on Matthew Stafford, really throttle him in this spot. I think there's going to be a lot more 49ers fans than Rams fans in that stadium. And it's just going to be a really tough spot for Matt Stafford. You liked what you saw from the young receivers, the connection. Oh, Matt Stafford doesn't like his young teammates. Well, they certainly like him after getting them a lot of juice and fantasy this week. So I like the matchup here, the 49ers defense against this Rams offense. I need to see more from the Rams offense. Obviously, I trust Stafford. I think he's great. But I've seen Stafford, especially against this opponent in the 49ers. Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan has always had Sean McVay's number. He's a 10-6 head-to-head record all time against him. And these are the spots where, I think the Rams could potentially cover at this line, but that would have to be off the strength of their defense, Laraib, which I think you were going to talk about. So I do like the Niners in this spot. I still haven't decided whether or not going to have them cover, but why don't you go ahead and take on the other side of the ball, Laraib?
Yeah, Lewis, that Rams defense, we have to give them a little bit of credit, Lewis, because they slowed down a top 10 offense in my Seahawks from last year. But I think this week, they're just going to have their hands full. Now, Brock Purdy, Lewis, to mention, has never played against this Rams team in his career. And so this will be his first time facing them. But Kyle Shanahan is definitely familiar with Sean McVay. And like you mentioned, he's just dominated this matchup. And so for this Rams team, they're going to have to stay disciplined because we know Kyle Shanahan likes to get his guys moving, a lot of movement behind the line of scrimmage, a lot of pre-snap movement as well. And I think even if Brock Purdy's unfamiliarity, even with his unfamiliarity, I think Kyle Shanahan just makes it a really easy game plan for him. And Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel go off in this one for a big one. And this Rams defense can get exposed in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Brock Purdy, just like LeVar Ball, never lost in all the starts where he has not gotten injured in them. So I don't think that changes here, Laraib. I like the Niners, and I'm going to have them cover. I'm going to go Niners 30 to Rams 17 on the road for a very statement start to their run through the NFC here, Laraib.
Yeah, Lewis and I will also be going with the 49ers 27-17 in a statement win in not on the road, SoFi Stadium, Lewis. But let's move on to what was supposed to be a huge matchup, Lewis. The New York Jets going to Dallas to play the Cowboys. Now Dallas -9 in this one, Lewis. And of course, with the unfortunate injury to Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson will be starting in this one. And I think he's going to have his hands full. Now we saw this Jets team rush the ball really, really effectively, Lewis, against the Bills. And that was one of the reasons they won that game. But in this one, I think the Cowboys stack the box. They know what's coming in this one. Force Zach Wilson to throw that ball and come away with an easy victory at home.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple game plan here for the defense, like you just laid out. I mean, I do not trust Zach Wilson in this spot. However, I will say this is a good test for this Dallas offense because I don't think they were really put in a spot to show off what they could do. And against a legit defense in this Jets defense, I want to see how they operate and how they attack it. Mike McDaniel is calling Mike McCarthy is calling the plays now for the Cowboys. So I'll be interested to see that clearly they want to emphasize on running the ball, playing a little bit more conservative. And this Jets defense was dominant, but I think they're going to be put in a lot of bad positions by their offense. And then on the road against Dallas in the spot, I just really don't see how the Jets can do much here. But yeah, this is a big test for me for Dak Prescott because not a lot of expectations anymore on this game. A lot of eyes are going to be subverted to other games at this spot. So how will you steal the show and not, just crumble and whatever? We win a 13-10 game against a bad defense. You shouldn't even be putting your team in that position. Go out, ball out, put this team away, and continue your dominant run. But I think he will do that. I like the Cowboys here. I'm going to go Cowboys 27 to Jets 3.
3. Yeah. I have to agree with you. I think, as good as
Zach Wilson
Jets,
is awful. I'm sorry. The people who are like gaslighting themselves, 6 weeks with Aaron Rodgers is really going to change his life. What? What are we talking about? It's still Zach Wilson. Until I see it, I will not believe it, Laraib.
Yeah. My train of thought was, So, as much as this Jets defense is good, Lewis, I think they're just going to get withered down after all those 3 and outs on offense. They're going to be gassed out, Lewis. And I think the Cowboys just dominate this one. I'm going to say the Jets score a late touchdown just to have, just because the Cowboys let up off the gas. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys 24-10 in a statement victory at home, Lewis. But let's move on to what's probably your favorite game this week. The Miami Dolphins and Tyreek Hill go to New England to pay the Patriots. Miami, Lewis, only -3 after their amazing offense in the last game. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that team a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, clearly Vegas is showing some respect to the effort that we saw the Patriots put out week 1. And I mean, there's some big question marks for this New England team, but I thought they looked pretty good. I think they go into that 16-0 hole early. Bad weather. They're just really not hitting on anything. But then I would say, Laraib, the last 2.5 quarters of that game, I thought the Patriots outplayed the Eagles. And you could certainly make that argument. So now here, they're at home again against a familiar foe. I mean, this is going to be a very, very interesting game. A game that, I was struggling with picking because I have that much respect for this New England team. because, they always find a way to take away what you're good at. Now, how much of the passing success last week was just Tua figuring it out? And he looked the best he's ever looked, making off-platform throws, escaping, just creating a lot more than we've ever seen him create. It wasn't just that fact that the Chargers defense was playing man-to-man on Tyreek Hill all game, which that's a decision. And Bill Belichick, he is going to take away Tyreek Hill. Now, when I say take away, it means he won't have 200 yards. Now, Tyreek Hill will still be a factor in this game, no doubt about it. But Bill is going to try, he's going to play 2 deep safety, probably some man, throwing some zone in there, and force Tua to take the underneath. But that's the thing, Laraib. I think that's what Tua wants. I think you had the luxury of Tyreek Hill, who's this Steph Curry, just gravity changer on the field, where you just throw him down, and you have to throw 2.5 guys in that direction at all times, and then you work the intermediate. So expect a big game from guys like Jalen Waddle, Braxton Berrios, River Craycraft, just working that intermediate, really dicing up these Patriots linebackers, who I think are good, but against that speed on Miami can really get exploited. Fun fact, Tua is 3-0 against the Patriots in his career, including a win on the road. So I do like Miami in this spot. But I don't know. We'll see how successful. I want to see more balance from Miami. I think Miami has a successful passing game attack, but I really want to see more balance from this team, Laraib.
Yeah, Lewis, and that's what I really expect Bill Belichick to do in this one. I think they only rush 4, Lewis, and they drop 7 in coverage. This Miami team really just can't run the ball that well, Lewis, of course, with Raheem Mostert, who's usually banged up, and Devon Achane, the rookie running back. And so it's going to be on Mike McDaniel. Is he going to mix in a lot more of that run than he did last week? And for this Patriots offense was over 300 passing yards for Mac Jones in that one. And like you mentioned, they kind of outplayed the Eagles team in the second half. But in this one, I think Mac Jones just is not able to keep up with this high-powered Miami offense who can just get whatever they want down the field. And I think Tua is 4-0 in his career against the Patriots after this one. This is a great number, Lewis, at -3 for the spread. And I think it is just going to be that. I like the Dolphins 27-24.
And that is the exact score that I've written down here, Laraib. I do like the Dolphins. I just think New England's offensively, I just want to see more. I thought they looked pretty impressive against the Dolphins outside from the first part of the game with the pick 6 and fumble with Zeke. I want to see them run the ball. They were not very effective running the ball. You can give credit to the Eagles defense, but we saw this Miami Dolphins team get thrashed on the ground by the Chargers, who don't really have that great of a running game. But I'm very excited to see how, guys like Ramondre Stevenson and new addition Zeke Elliott are going to be able to attack this Chargers front. And I think they'll have this Dolphins front, excuse me. I think they'll have a successful game. So I think it'll slow it down, allow for not as explosive a game from the Miami offense. But I do like Miami in this spot at 27-24. So that'll do it for the Sunday games, Laraib. Let's move on to our Monday night double header, including starting off with my New Orleans Saints going to Carolina, and the Saints are favored by 3 on the road, Laraib. Who do you like here and why?
I love the Saints in this one, Lewis. Now, Bryce Young struggled against that Atlanta Falcons defense. I can only imagine what he's going to have to deal with this week in the Saints. Marshawn Lattimore looked like a demon, and Cameron Jordan looked like his usual self on that defensive front. I think, this Panthers team really doesn't have that number one option on the outside, Lewis. They really don't have a great run attack, and I think Bryce Young is just going to get dominated in this one. Now, for the Saints, they had a lot of red zone woes last week, Lewis. Got to the red zone 4 times, only scored only one touchdown from outside of the red zone. I think even if they struggle again this week, Lewis, and have to do a lot of field goal kicking, that can get it done in this type of game.
I think running the ball is going to be a big emphasis for the Saints offense, whether it's getting Taysom Hill involved more or just trying a lot more with Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller, their rookie out of TCU, is still questionable coming into this game. So we'll see whether or not he can add more of a dynamic element to this running game, because that's the thing I feel like they were missing in those intermediate areas, especially the red zone. Outside of that, game clinching first down run from Jamal Williams, they were pretty unsuccessful running a ball against a pretty formidable Titans defense, to say the least. So I expect them to, run the ball. We saw how formidable the Falcons were running the ball against this Panthers front last week. So that's going to be the big emphasis for the Saints, because that sets everything up. We see how Derek Carr loves playing play action. A lot of these, Derek Carr type quarterbacks, that's when they can really get out from a clean pocket, have more time to, show off their arm down the field to guys like Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave. Big thing in this game, Laraib, standout rookie, and you just hate this for him, man. But J.C. Horn, who's a superb talent, but just keeps getting injured, out for this game with a hamstring injury. So they're really going to be able to test the secondary. Our boy Jeremy Chinn's still going to be back there. So, you can't be too good. But Brian Burns on the edge, Derek Brown, they're going to, solve some – they're going to be problems for the Saints offensive line. So you're going to need a lot of help. Foster Moreau, a tight end, help out with the pass protection, keep the Panthers honest with a running game. I want to see a lot of Taysom Hill in this game. The direct snaps, what's going to him. So you got to keep him honest, maybe do a fake play. And yeah, as you mentioned, this is an awful, awful, awful matchup for the Panthers offense, with a great secondary in the Saints and just no receiving options for Bryce Young and the Panthers. So I like the Saints here. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, though. I'm going to go Saints 13 to Panthers 10.
Yeah, Lewis, hopefully Brian Burns is not matched up on your boy Trevor Penning's all game. Otherwise, that's going to be a rough night for him.
False Moreau with the chip.
But I'm going to pick the Saints, Lewis, by win big in this one. I think, Bryce Young just can't get it done, and the Saints are able to capitalize on some great field position and some short punts. I like the Saints 20-10 on the road.
Yep. All right, so let's move on to our final game of our slate. We have the Cleveland Browns 2.5-point favorites at Pittsburgh in this game. I'm going to go ahead and start. I think there were a lot of overreactions made about both these teams from their performances last week. And I think, the Cleveland defensive line definitely looked like the biggest standout. You bring Jim Schwartz in, the defensive coordinator. He's been everywhere, Detroit, Philadelphia, and he's always had very, very successful defenses without blitzing. So we'll see how successful they could be against the Steelers offensive line. Now, I was having some trouble with that 49ers front, but the 49ers, they do a lot of trickery. They do a lot of corner blitzes. They do a lot of stunts, things like that. Jim Schwartz is more traditional, just, gap responsibility up front in your face with that defensive line, just has studs on it. Super deep defensive line too. So how can the Steelers be effective? They need to be able to run the ball, and they're going to figure out, if not now, then definitely later this season, that Najee Harris is just not that guy. I'm sorry. He only moves at one speed, and that speed is jogging. Meanwhile, you have, Jaylen Warren, who I really expect to have a bigger role in this offense as the season goes on. He's a lot more dynamic. You can use him a lot more effectively in the passing game. I think he's going to have a bigger role, and they need to be able to run the ball. But, I just think this Cleveland offense did not impress me whatsoever. I like the Steelers in this spot simply because I do not trust Deshaun Watson. I think TJ Watt's going to have a monster game. He had 3 sacks in week 1, and I think he's going to have a similar type performance. The big thing that I do have a question with is the Steelers secondary, but Deshaun Watson is not the quarterback, and they really don't have the receivers to really test the secondary like the 49ers could last week with Brandon Ayuk. So I like the Steelers in that sense. And then, come on, a home underdog against the Browns for Mike Tomlin to go 0-2 on the season, that is not going to happen. So I like the Steelers in this spot.
Well, Lewis, history is definitely with you. The Pittsburgh Steelers are won their last 20 Monday night games, Lewis, and their last 19 home games against the Browns, Lewis. But that being said, Lewis, no Cam Hayward in this game. No Deontay Johnson in this game, Lewis. Right tackle Okafor is banged up, Lewis, in this game. And now you bring me Myles Garrett, potential defensive player of the year candidate, Lewis. You bring in Nicholas Chubb, the best running back in the NFL, Lewis. And that is a recipe for a disaster for their Steelers team. I think This Browns defense is not something to mess with, Lewis. And Kenny Pickett, just like he did last Sunday, is going to have somebody in his face all night long. And with no Cam Hayward on the defensive line, Lewis, I think this Browns offensive line is going to be able to get some more help on TJ Watt and can win this one, Lewis. And so I like the Browns. Now, I agree with you. Deshaun Watson did not have the best game of his life against the Bengals. And that was, of course, just a downpour game. Neither quarterbacks played very well in that one, but it was a ground game with Nick Chubb. I think if they get him going and get that play action pass going with Eli Moore and Amari Cooper on the outside, the Steelers just don't have anybody to keep up in this one. Of course, we love George Pickens as a second-year wide receiver, and Freiermuth caught a touchdown against the 49ers. But I think in this one, the Browns end the 19-game losing streak on the road against the Steelers in what is going to be a defensive battle where both quarterbacks don't play that well, Lewis, but Nicholas Chubb outperforms Najee Harris like he has the entire time he's been in the NFL, and the Browns win it 23-20 on the road.
Well, good thing games aren't decided by running backs, Laraib. Or the Browns would be probably your Super Bowl champion. But, I just think this is a spot where Cleveland has historically failed with expectations going to Pittsburgh, a historic organization that you just mentioned the stats. This is where they perform well. It's going to be an ugly game, but, I just have more faith in the Steelers offense. I think that, I don't care what I saw.
Who are they going to throw the ball to, Lewis?
That was the quarterback, George Pickens. Pat Freiermuth.
Oh, so when George Pickens is being covered by Jimmy Ward.
Oh, Jimmy Ward. Denzel Ward.
Ward.
Who might not even play in the game because he is questionable. He barely, he was injured last game, and he was
locked
going
up
into
Jamar
that one.
Chase. And who's
the rain locked up Jamar Chase.
George Pickens.
Okay. Well, and another thing is a sneaky performance from Allen Robinson as well for the Steelers team. So I really do like the Steelers in this spot, and you are not going to change my mind. Give me Steelers 24 to Browns 13. Dominant performance. Put the Browns in the dirt where they belong. Did you give your score, Laraib?
Yeah, 23-20. Close game, fun. This is going to be a game to watch, Lewis, while the Saints are blowing out the Panthers on this Monday night doubleheader. And so, 23-20. Give me the Browns as they stop history in its tracks.
Let's go. I'm so happy you're picking it too, because it's going to happen again where I went off the Monday night game. But let's roll through some of the games that we were not able to talk about in depth. We have the Raiders taking on the Bills. Bills favored by 8. Laraib, what do you got?
Yeah, Lewis, I just really love the Bills in this one, 35-20. The Bills, of course, after, a really bad loss, they're just going to come out and just dominate on an unworthy opponent. And so they win by 15 points.
Yeah, I agree. I have the Bills 30-7. Moving on, we have the Chicago Bears going to Tampa. Tampa favored by 2.5. I personally like Tampa in this spot. Chicago did not show me what I wanted to see offensively from the improvement of Justin Fields in this offense. So give me Tampa in this spot. 28-10. Yeah,
Lewis, I have to agree with you. I think it's going to be a little bit closer scoring, but for sure. The Bucks were able to keep they let Justin Jefferson run wild on them, but still the Vikings only score 17 points. And like you mentioned, Justin Fields just did not have that, step up that we expected him to have. Even if you give a blind man a Ferrari, Lewis, that does not mean he knows how to drive it. DJ Moore is going to struggle over there in Chicago. He's going to want to get out of there as soon as possible. Give me the Buccaneers 23-20.
All right, next we have the Indianapolis Colts going to Houston to face the Texans. 2 rookie quarterbacks. Houston favored at home. Bob, who are you going with?
I'm going with the Colts, Lewis. I think Anthony Richardson, out of any of the rookie quarterbacks, week 1 performed the best. And I think he can kind of, he had 223 passing yards against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think he can have some more of that success this week against the Texans. Give me the Colts 23-21.
And I'm going to disagree, Laraib. I like Houston in this spot. I really liked what I saw from CJ Stroud in the passing game. I think this defense is actually pretty good. Derek Stingley had a pretty good game shutting down OBJ. So I think I like the Texans in this spot. They're going to get back to Dameon Pierce in this game, who was not effective against that front from the Ravens. But I think they get back on track. So I'm going to go Texans 21-20. in this ball game, Laraib. So let's go New York Giants going to Arizona to face the Cardinals. This is a revenge game for the Giants after that 40-0 shellacking. They need their get back going to Arizona. I mean, this is the perfect opponent for them to face. They finally get to unleash all their rage on the worst team in the NFL. I like the Giants here big, 28-11.
Yeah, Lewis, this is almost like a must-win game for this Giants team, even though it's only week 2 in the NFL. You get 40 bomb, like you mentioned, at home, and now you're facing one of the worst rosters in the entire NFL. But I will say the Cardinals did have 6 sacks on Sam Howell last week. So, we're going to see Brian Daboll mix up some of the, more of that quick passing game in this one. And I think they come out with an easy victory. I agree with you. Give me the Giants 24-13.
All right, and then finally, we have the Washington Commanders going to Denver to play the Broncos. Broncos favored by 3.5. I like the Broncos here at home. I think this is a game they need after dropping that one against the Raiders. Sam Howell, I thought he'd look a lot more impressive. He did not show me what I needed to see. He only attempted 1 pass in the fourth quarter in a game that they were down for a little bit. So, I mean, if they don't have faith in them, I'm not going to have faith in him. So give me Denver here to right the ship. Denver 21 to Washington 13.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Even though we saw his Broncos offense struggle against a bad Raiders defense, Lewis, I think in this one, it's really going to be the Broncos defense that carries them once again. Sam Howell got sacked 6 times last week. I think he can get sacked 6 times again this week against a Broncos team. And of course, with Terry McLaurin, shadowed by Pat Surtain, it's really going to be on Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. But I think Sam Howell's inexperience in this one cost them the game. Give me the Broncos 21-17.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our week 2 predictions. Now we're going to move on to our locks, upsets, and best bets of the week, Laraib. We'll go ahead and start with you. Who is your lock of the week?
My lock of the week, Lewis, I have to go with them once again, the Kansas City Chiefs. After they burned me week 1, I think Mahomes, the numbers say 13-3 after a loss. He's playing on his birthday weekend. Travis Kelce's probably playing this one. I think they just dominate this Jaguars team, Lewis, and get an easy dub on the road.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That was my lock. And then, but that was my first choice for a lock. My next choice is the Giants on the road. I think they're playing with their hair on fire. They need this game against a bad team. They were just embarrassed. The Cardinals can feel good about themselves. Oh, yeah, we played the Commanders pretty tough. Well, now the Giants are coming here looking for blood, and I think they need this one, so they're going to win on the road.
All right, Lewis, that's a good one. And for my upset, special permission from one Lewis Butler to pick a team who is not 3.5 in this one, Lewis. So thank you very much. That's definitely going to come back to bite me in the ass sometime later this season. But give me the Ravens on the road, Lewis. You always love these divisional games to be your upsets. You never know which team is going to come out with their hair on fire. And I think the Ravens, who kind of struggled offensively last week against the Texans, kind of pick it up this week against the Bengals.
Laura, sometimes I could just be nice. That doesn't have to be a give and take. Yeah, you'll regret that. My upset is the Seattle Seahawks going into Detroit. I think Detroit, feels pretty fat and happy about themselves. Seattle, a team that covered versus a team that didn't cover. Usually the team that didn't cover wins outright, or at least covers in these spots. So I like Seattle. I prefer them at the 4.5 number, plus 4.5. But right here, I'm going to take them straight up. And then finally, our best bets of the week. Did you hit your best bet of the week? Yeah, you did. Yes, with the Ravens, right?
Minus 10 dominant. Well, they covered.
They got it. So now we're realizing, hey, if you want to make money, my best bet, the Steelers, not looking too hot last week. I went back in the lab and I cooked up Cincinnati -3. That's a number I like. Even if they get the 3 points, then, you still push and it's fine. But I like them at that number. A team that didn't cover versus a team that covered. I like them at home, divisional opponent. They will win this game. And I think they win it big against this injured Baltimore team.
That's a good one, Lewis, but not going to happen. Meanwhile, my best bet, Packers plus 1.5. I think this is once again the Packers being undervalued last week. They were actually +1 last week +1 or -1 against.
They were plus. They were plus.
Yeah, they were plus against the Bears, and now once again facing an inferior opponent that has a worse roster, that has a terrible quarterback once again, who doesn't know how to throw the ball once again. I think the Packers just come out with another statement win, and they win. They get the +1.5.
All right. Well, that's going to do it today for our week 1 predictions. As we mentioned beforehand, if you want to check out our Thursday Night Football predictions, you can go back to our week 1 recap. So for week 2, my bad, this is our week 2 NFL predictions. So go check that out. And then as always, check our descriptions for anything on our social media platforms. And we'll be posting our recap of week 2 next week on Tuesday. So make sure you are on the lookout for that. And hey, if you have any, if you liked how our format was today, let us know in the comments below. Maybe let us know if it's too many games, if we should cut it down by 1 or 2, and just give us the feedback. We are always cooperative and ready for your feedback, Laraib. Anything else you want to say before we head out of here today?
No, I think this is the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.